You're listening to Player Development, a channel focused on the intersection of sports and character growth. Please like and subscribe to support the stories being shared, the growth of our listeners, and to stay up to date with our latest content. Hey everybody, welcome back to another video where we talk about our relationship with sports in light of news stories that are breaking in sports. So today we're going to be talking about this tweet that Kanter sent out, tweeting at LeBron. And basically, he's talking about how LeBron's been very pro-social justice, talking about educational opportunities for minority kids and police brutality and systemic racism in the U.S. and basically calling him out on a double standard that he doesn't seem to care as much about how his Nike shoes are made. And Nike, to give a bit of historical context, has had a history in the 90s of having really big problems with sweatshops and mistreatment of workers in other countries, not paying a living wage, just terrible working conditions that are unsafe for workers, and just profiting off of those mistreated workers. And so what I'm guessing Kanter is getting at here is that LeBron is making this double standard where he can have good PR for promoting social justice in the US, but that he's still willing to profit off of mistreatment of others in other countries, as long as he's still selling shoes and he's still making money off of it. So to give a little context to what Kanter's talking about, there was a Guardian report that came out in 2017. So this is a couple years out of date, but it's possible that a lot of these conditions still apply, are still in place. So the Guardian published a report on factories in Cambodia supplying Nike among other sportswear companies, and found that in 2017 over 500 of the workers were hospitalized and 350 of them collapsed within a 3-day span. They also found that temperatures within the factory would often rise above 37 degrees Celsius, and that none of the 4 factories that they investigated paid a living wage. They didn't meet minimum wage requirements for that country, not even US standards. And so this was in Cambodia. Obviously, Kanter's tweeting about China. And so the Guardian did say that their findings were limited to those Cambodian factories that they examined, but that reportedly conditions are worse in countries such as Vietnam. So what do we do with this tweet? Obviously, LeBron has made his response or non-response, depending on how you read it, and Kanter is getting some support as well as some criticism for how he's approaching this. What I will say is that obviously I'm not in either of these players' heads. I don't know what their intentions and motivations are. But just being human, they can't prioritize everything. So I think it's admirable that LeBron has put money into the different opportunities that he has funded and put his support and his influence behind different social justice causes. And if those are important to him, then all power to him. I definitely admire him putting his money and his time and his efforts into that. At the same time, I also admire Kanter for bringing out something that could be perceived as maybe hypocritical on LeBron's part, and pointing out that, Nike having partnerships with major sports leagues like the NBA, or having multi-million-dollar contracts with these star athletes, are making money off of abuses of minority people. But to be fair, both of them are only human. they can't prioritize everything. Even LeBron, with all his wealth and all his influence, has a limit to what he can pay attention to and what he can put his time and energy into. And he's chosen specific causes, and Kanter has obviously put his eye on different causes. And there's nothing wrong with either of them choosing what they've chosen to pursue. One obvious example of this is the school that LeBron helped fund and open back in Akron, Ohio. He's choosing causes that hit close to home for him, that match up with his experience, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another dynamic that we might pay attention to is that LeBron is an American player, homegrown, and has spent his schooling days and all his playing days playing in the US. And that Kanter comes from an international bent. If I remember right, he's Turkish. And just the different perspectives that brings, that Americans tend to think through an American lens, in that we focus on American history and American problems, and we tend to see those things more in isolation. And if there are problems outside of the United States, we tend not to focus on them as long as they don't impact us personally. And very broadly speaking, it seems like international people tend to see things more globally and more interconnected. And so Kanter might see, hey, these people in China or Vietnam or Cambodia are not my people per se, but their work and their treatment affects me as a player, as somebody who might purchase these goods or might profit off of these goods. And there may be shortcomings to how our culture teaches and socializes these things. But again, I don't necessarily see any malicious intent on either's part, just because they're coming at it from different perspectives and different upbringings. Third thing I'll say is that LeBron, with his platform, would absolutely have a huge impact on how Nike does things. If he were to really put his support behind Nike bringing ethical practice into their production and their distribution, I think we could see things clean up almost overnight. I mean, just imagine, you think about Michael Jordan and how Nike is still profiting, and Jordan too, of course, is profiting off of the sale of Air Jordans and releasing new shoes every couple of years. The whole product line of the Air Jordan, that's a lot of money. And if LeBron were to even threaten or hint that he would be putting his name and his iconography behind a different brand, or to sign with a different brand, man, you would see Nike change things overnight. And that being said, it's hard to say where the line is between that he has this power and its ability, and whether he has a responsibility or some kind of requirement to use it in that way. And this is where, again, maybe we might be talking about different perspectives, that in America we're very individualistic, so if he doesn't want to use his influence in that way, he may not have to. But you go to another culture, you might hear this perspective of that he's profiting off of the mistreatment of these workers in other countries, and he's making millions, potentially billions. I don't know what his net worth is at this point, or what his lifetime profits from Nike are. But that they're not even being paid a living wage in their country, so that he can continue making this money, and Nike executives can be making this kind of money. So it's a difficult balance to strike, talking about whether he has a responsibility to these workers who, like it or not, do support his livelihood, to better their way of life, to better their standard of living. And the final thing I'll say about this is that I think both of them come from a good place. Kanter and LeBron are both speaking from their experience and speaking about things that are important to them and are absolutely important issues of social justice. I do wish that maybe Kanter could have come across in a less attacking way, less pointing out the hypocrisy or the double standard, as much as maybe going to LeBron and having that conversation with him. I don't know if they run in the same circles, but being able to maybe put awareness on Nike or Adidas or whatever other companies, Under Armour, that may have unethical practice, to be able to build a constructive relationship to work with those companies to affect change that might be more focused on the workers and put some of that attention on the brands themselves to be able to do better, instead of it turning into this public feud between two individuals. There may be ways for that to happen in the future, and I hope so. I love wearing, but this turns the attention to us as consumers as well, that, like it or not, every time we buy those products, we are paying into that system that we might say is unjust or unequal. But then again, we cast our votes, so to speak, with our wallets. And so if we continue to buy those things, we need to examine what part we play in perpetuating that inequity.